well as myself, and hope to make this conversation very engaging for all of you. Just to set the little background over here, I think all of us in this session who are listening in are aware of the kind of impact COVID-19 has had on all of us. And it has not spared any industry. Goa specifically, where the backbone essentially is on tourism, has been very densely impacted. And this forum has been created for ideas to come out, to look at Goa in new light, to build the brand Goa 2.0 post-COVID. And these ideas are essentially on a platform which is www.ideasforgoa.com. It's an open source platform. It's just for everyone to pitch in, because I think this is the time where everybody needs to contribute. Everyone needs to stand up and say, this is what I would want to see Goa in the next few years to come. And most importantly, the ideas which are generated, they are available for anyone. So even if the people who have to implement it, they look at it and they take the initiative, they can take it forward. There is no IP, so to say, on these ideas, right? And when we look at human history, what is human history? Human history is basically a backlog of ideas. So please go to www.ideasforgoa.com, pitch in your ideas. Even while this session is on, please engage yourself on the website and keep writing in whatever your thoughts are. Thank you. So without much ado, let me begin with introduction of the panel. We have a very exciting panel today. I'll start with Mr. Vincent Ramos. Mr. Vincent Ramos started his career with industry giants like the Leela Group, the Four Seasons Hotels, and he's currently employed as the area director of IHCL Goa. He's also the general manager of Taj Exotica and oversees 9 hotel operations of various IHCL brands, which is Taj, Vivanta, and Ginger. Welcome, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you, Samir.
Next, we have the very dynamic Ravi Shankar. Ravi is the CEO of Drishti Marine. I'm sure everybody is on this forum would have definitely seen his team working very hard on the beaches. Drishti Lifesaving provides professional lifeguard services on behalf of Department of Tourism, Government of Goa, deployed across Goa. It is a lifeguard program using practices focused on ensuring safety standards for the people on Goa's beaches and water bodies. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you very much, Samarth.
We have our own conservationist, as we call him, Mr. Parag Rangnikar. He is the state coordinator for Goa of the Indian Bird Conservation Network and the founder president of Goa Bird Conservation Network. He is also the member of Goa State Biodiversity Board and Invertebrate Conservation and Information Network for Southeast Asia. Another very prestigious thing that he's done is he has been a recipient of the Outlook Responsible Tourism Award as well. Parag, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
We also have Ernest. Ernest is like Amitabh Bachchan of Goan tourism industry. He's seen all the actors come and go, and he's been there watching the entire tourism industry evolve. As a designation, he is the COO of SITA and TCI. Ernest, welcome to the forum.
Thank you, sir.
We also have Jack. Jack is Vice President, North Goa Travel and Tourism Association of Goa, which is popularly known as TTAG, and also Vice President of Skal Club of Goa. He is also partner at the Welcome Heritage Panjimin, Goa's finest first classified heritage hotel. Jack, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Samarth.
So great. I think we are all set to begin. You can grab your cup of coffees or tea, whatever works for you, and get ready for an engaging session. So few housekeeping rules before we kick off. All the attendees will be on mute. The panelists will be able to speak when they want to. We will start the panel discussion with the questions which we have already received in advance for the webinar. A lot of you have been pouring in a lot of questions, ideas, just when this whole thing was, was announced. Okay, and the attendees should put their questions in the Q&A window, and the team will select a few for the panelists to answer once the initial panel discussion is over. So guys, let's kick off. And when we want to begin this entire conversation, I think the first thing that we want to engage upon is the situation at hand, the COVID-19 pandemic, which is resulting in lockdowns across. We have travel restrictions on, and we also need to, at the same time, safeguard our economic well-being. So, keeping that in mind, this entire initiative, which is Ideas for Goa, was formed. Okay, and ensuring that we want to keep this engagement going, we want to keep the ideas coming, we have put this platform together. We have our final panelist, Mr. Braganza, joining us. Welcome, Mr. Braganza. Okay, I think, Mr. Braganza, are you there? So I think he's just figuring out his audio issues. So let's kick off the session, and I would be asking a few questions, and I'll go around the entire panel and would seek your opinion on some of the things that we have received. The first thing what we would like to discuss is that we have always talked about the ideal tourist or the ideal traveler coming into Goa. And over the years, we have seen the entire profile changing to a certain extent. So once this pandemic is over and we are ready to go live, right? Hi, Mr. Braganza.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We're just waiting for you to come on board. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll take the opportunity to introduce you as well. Mr. Braganza is a civil lawyer and was the past president and vice president of TTAG Goa. He's presently a member of the managing committee as well. He is also the owner of Doubletree by Hilton Arpora Baga. He is also the owner for La Goa Azul Arpora Goa and the luxury heritage boutique hotel Mansion House in Anjuna. Mr. Braganza, welcome.
Thank you and welcome you all.
So we just were about to begin the session, and first question which I wanted to ask the panel essentially was, what is the ideal profile of the Goan traveler? I mean, the person traveling into Goa. While we have, debated this that, okay, should we have more domestic, more foreign, but from these particular countries, I think those debates have been on. So I would like to start with Jack, because a lot of people in Fontaine come from different parts of the world, and he's been seeing that change as well. So Jack, your first few opinions.
My view, I think, on the ideal traveler would be something contrary to what most tourism boards look at. I would look at someone who is more a traveler than a tourist. By this, I would say, what do I mean when I say a traveler? Traveler is someone who comes to experience the ways of life in a new place, see the culture, see how the people live. And in a way, it stimulates his mind and gets his mind going. And over the years, I think some of the most interesting people that I have met have been people like this, When I started working with my dad somewhere in the mid-90s, early 90s, one day someone just had come who had cycled all over the world. He had been in Gaza, he had been in other places, and he was in fact an eye to Harry Kissinger, and he was roaming all over the place on a cycle on a world tour. So I would say that sort of traveler is the ideal traveler who comes to experiences a place, who gives back to it, and in turn stimulates other such people to come. Of course, the spending power is important, but it's more important to get the right, intellectual vibe or the energy going.
Absolutely. And I think the new domestic traveler also is a very conscious and aware traveler. I mean, Mr. Ramos, you have a very wide portfolio of hotels catering to all segments. So have you seen the transition, and what is the transition you would like to see?
Yeah, so there has been up and down on this, and especially I think there's no clarity of thought, and it starts with some of our ministers. And the last comment that was given was that we need to have something like a wealthy guest as well as a hippie guest. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s. So I think the clarity of thought is very important for Goa. If you recollect, about 20 years back, Goa was in the position of Maldives, and Maldives was in the position of Goa, and it is now the other way around. So because we are getting very cheap tourists, which Maldives used to get once upon a time. But I think they clearly, I think because maybe the country was small and there was a clarity of thought in the administration, they put their foot down and said that, okay, this is what we need. Like Sri Lanka did it for many years. If you have so many dollars, you need to, then only you can come into Sri Lanka. So I am not saying that, that you don't have low class tourists. You need to have that. Like, for example, giving a very classic example of our hotels, you need to have a ginger guest, you need to have a Vivanta guest, you need to have a selection guest, and you need to have a Taj guest, and maybe even above Taj guest. So you need to cater to every segment. But I think what Goa really lacks is the PR part of it. The PR, when I say we need to maybe the government needs to hire a great PR agency where the whole thing can change. Maybe the advisors to the government, what to say in the media, in good all fairness and with all respect, because in Goa, there are only two industries, and industries that earn the daily bread for Goa. It is the mining and it is the tourism. Mining for whatever reason. Tourism, if it stops, where are we going to land? Because if for every hotel job, there are 5 other jobs that are created by the stakeholders indirectly. For every room, every guest that comes in a hotel, maybe it's entertainment, maybe it is in ways of supplies of vegetable or whatever. So I think, if we don't get it right this time, and this is for us like a reboot, and what do you do when a computer hangs, what do you do? When your computer hangs, you just shut it off. And that's what we have done. We have just shut it off. But what do you do then? You remove all the files that are corrupted, correct? And then you start a new chapter. Now, if you do not remove the files that are corrupted at this stage, and don't, look at the things that we are doing wrong at this stage, your computer is going to hang again. We are going to go back to the same thing of, tourists by the road, washing their clothes, cooking their food, so the same thing will happen. So coming back to your question of an ideal tourist or a guest, I would say we need to cater to everyone, but we need to really keep out that riffraff out. I don't know how we are going to do that, because that is bringing a lot of bad name. Maybe there are a lot of other things like drugs.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of things that come in. It's just not that they are cooking on the road. Maybe there's a hippie culture and they probably are into drugs, and they are not the ones who stay in 5-star hotels or in a star hotels, but they take this small houses. And that's how it is.
So, Mr. Ramos, let me take Mr. Braganza's opinion, because he has said, let me just pull in Mr. Braganza here, and he has been part of, as they say, the tourist belt on the north side, and he has seen it transform over the last few decades, right? Mr. Braganza, your few words here in terms of what is the ideal tourist that you would prefer, and not just as somebody who has properties in those areas, but also as a local in that segment.
Good afternoon or good evening. We in Goa are a blend of East and the West. And what drove tourism right in the 70s is this mix of East and the West. And gradually over the years, we have seen that tourism has moved away from that blend. We are no longer having that balance between the East and the West as far as the input of tourists are supposed to be, that are coming to Goa. Over the years, now about 80% of tourists or 90% of tourists are domestic. Now the domestic tourists started coming into Goa because they thought Goa was a foreign destination with a lot of whites and foreigners. But over the period, the very purpose why the domestics were coming to Goa is kind of defeated by all kind of tourists coming to Goa, driving in without any control as to the quality. The quality of the tourist has gone down appreciably. And we have had so many seminars, conferences, endlessly. But I think we are looking at the macro picture rather than the micro picture. We need to get into a mode of implementing our policies we have been discussing for years together. I remember when I took over as the president in 2012 and then again in 14, we have given presentations time and again to the government on various aspects of the growth of tourism. Then we did a white paper. All of them are on paper. Nothing has been implemented. And one of the important aspects of implementation was the formation of the tourism board. And I have been harping on this time and again. We must get people, private industry involved in the tourism industry. And it should not be a government-driven exercise with babus who know nothing about tourism advising us how to go ahead. There is too much wastage of government money in going to trade fairs and other shows and doing.
I agree, sir. I agree. And I think,
therefore, as a result of it, we are only planning at the macro stage. And we need to get down to micro analysis of what has gone wrong. And to correct it, first thing we have to do is to get the tourism board online.
so,
Yes.
Ravi, you have been working very closely with the tourism department as well. But, while I would like to discuss on those elements a little more, you have also been seeing the kind of profile that your team has been interfacing with, the profile of tourists. Okay. Have you guys done some bit of research of yourself that, okay, this segment is something that, is tolerable on the beach of sorts, because at the end of the day, the beaches are our jewels, right? So is there something that your team has been able to, pin out?
Thanks, Amar. Actually, going back first to your first question, which you said, what is the ideal tourist one would want in Goa? I mean, for me, I think everybody who comes here should be a swimmer. It'll make my life much easier, yeah. But yeah, going back to the question you were asking, actually, I don't allude to the theory that there's something called a good tourist and a bad tourist. What it is that a destination, that is, we as stakeholders into the state need to emulate values that the tourist who's coming starts imbibing. So I always feel a destination is actually, the tourist is a mirror of the destination. What we put out is what we get in. So as specifically talking about what you call visitor behavior or how people are from the last 2 decades coming on the beach, honestly speaking, the pockets are larger, but the kind of tourists that came in 20 years ago to now, the numbers would have changed, but behavior patterns are still similar. Human beings are human beings, So it's a question of the state or us as stakeholders putting out what we believe is the right way to stay in our city.
So Ravi, you brought out a very important point over there that, a place, the traveler profile is a reflection of the place in itself, right? And Parag, you've been, the championing this cause, saying that, let's highlight aspects of Goa which are, much more genuine, much more beautiful, and at the same time, keep preservation on our, forefront all the time. So from your perspective, I'm sure the ideal tourist profile would be much different, right? So your perspective there?
Right. So I'll kind of answer maybe the question in two fronts. One is who's an ideal tourist? I think I would rather borrow from what Jack said. Somebody who's a traveler, and I would add to it saying that someone who behaves as a guest coming into a state. I think that's the kind of traveler who I mean that would be the ideal traveler that I'm looking for. Somebody who respects the state that he or she comes into. I think that would be a good beginning. Now, how do we do it is you know kind of a little complicated question. But I think the first thing that I would rather say is how we promote ourselves, how we brand ourselves. I think defines also the kind of tourists that we get. Um, Something that always hurts me, and nothing against any particular thing, is whenever I travel, let's say to the northeast, the gateway is either Guwahati or Kolkata, and when you land in Guwahati in Assam, the first thing that welcomes you is a beautiful rhino. It's a nice mural of a rhino that welcomes you at the airport. What welcomes you when you come to Goa? I don't see any state symbols out there. It's just casino boards. I mean, nothing against casinos, but the kind of image that we put across is, that's how it will be branded, and that's the kind of tourist you will get. So I think that's my take on it.
So well said, well said. And I think, Ernest, you have been seeing the inflow of multitudes of different nationalities coming in through the years, right? Uh, I wouldn't ask you the question which nationality is the best nationality fit for Goa, but what I would ask you is that, because at some point of time, what tour operators also project Goa to be, okay, gets communicated in that particular manner. So as everybody has been saying, that we need to be our own filters to a certain extent. What has been your observation and your learning, and how would you want to see the next phase to open up? Honest, you're on mute.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to mention that as a company, we handle a lot of domestic and international tourists. The SOTC and TCA arm handles the domestic business, and the CETA arm handles the international tourists. When we talk about international tourists, we handle clients staying from the guest houses right up to the 5-star deluxe hotels.
Right.
The repeat clientele in Goa is very high. See, we have done business, we do business to a similar state like Kerala. The repeat number of clients to Kerala is very low, although they claim that there's a lot to see in Kerala. But the repeat clientele to Goa, be it Russians, English, Germans, is very high. Recently, I was pleasantly surprised, after this lockdown, that there were so many different foreign nationalities living in Goa. So we had around, I think, 20 repatriation flights taking these people away. And still I'm told there's more than 1,000 odd foreign nationals living in Goa. So in Goa, we have a wide choice. I believe that we offer accommodation to every type of clientele in Goa. But now when you talk about ideas going forward, I would like to say that we need to concentrate now with this COVID. We need to concentrate on ecotourism. We need to concentrate on villa tourism, because people will be looking at these type of accommodation to stay on. Smaller type of accommodation, family-oriented accommodation. And we have it. It's not that the big hotels or the hotels with big room inventory will not get the business. But let's look at a separate, different angle of the tourism. And you'll be surprised to know that in spite of all this, from Europe, forget about inquiries, I've already started receiving bookings, because recently we have opened up Goa for the winters, and bookings are trickling in because Europe is dead for the summers. There's no one going on holidays during the summers. So Europeans want to travel, and they plan their travels well in advance. So this is a good sign that Goa being COVID-free, touch wood. I hope this continues and we get the numbers in the coming winters. But we need to concentrate and look at new ideas, as you said. I would say ecotourism we have, but we are not promoting. We don't give support. Government has to give them support, not only talk, give them support. And secondly is villa concepts. For example, now if someone has a small, even a guest house who has a villa, to register that is a crazy process. How will someone go through all the formalities? So make it easy for them. So they also can participate in the tourism overall benefit for everyone. So let's look at that.
Yeah, I think leveraging technology where it is possible should make things much easier. And this is a great point where we can, introduce technology in multiple places where things which are long dragging can become more like a single window clearances of sorts. So I think point valid, very strongly made. And very interesting point which you mentioned, Ernest, is that the interest in Goa has not come down. Even with tourists abroad, and which brings us to the next question, okay, which is on everybody's mind, that as individuals, travel and tourism is something which is on probably the last priority right now on individuals, right? We don't look at maybe even from a corporates or the events, all these aspects where you expect a larger crowd to come in. And Mr. Vincent, I would again request you to give your insight with tourism itself having lower mind share right now on people's thinking, okay, is that again to be converted into an opportunity by Goa? And if so, how? I mean, whatever people are are able to kind of make the decision to travel, how do we prioritize Goa for them as one of the places? And whether we need to have some sort of a destination management organization which is like a team. I know TTAG does a lot of that, but in the new scenario, do you suppose that something of that sort should also be there?
So I didn't get your question very clearly. What is the question? Sorry.
So what we are talking here is that in the next phase, which is post-COVID, right?
Correct.
Travel is not a priority for a lot of people, right?
Correct.
They are looking at healthcare, they are looking at literally
Absolutely.
retaining their jobs and other scenarios. But whatever travel shall happen, how should Goa get prioritized in that form of travel? So what is the positioning, what is the branding that we have to come out with?
So as I've said that, I think Goa needs a very good, and I think Mr. Braganza also said that, there's a lot of work that is done in the past, on the white paper. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that have already been there. And I think it's time for us to bring it out. And Goa really needs a good PR agency, in the sense when I'm saying this is a really like what, Kerala did many years back, God's own country, something like on those lines. Today, if you talk about any state in Goa, in India, it is Goa which is COVID free. And by the blessing of our gods, I think it is it's the right thing to have for us. But how do we leverage on this? How do we make sure that all the panels we have done, or all the sacrifices we have done of all this time, how do we bring it out now? So that is what is important, because Goa is also, in a driving distance of many destinations. Like, for example, Bangalore, once it becomes COVID free, how do we make sure that this domestic section, people drive down to Bangalore? What are the steps we are going to do? How we are going to look at it? How we are going to encourage them to drive down, probably if the flights are not taking off? How do we make people come down from Mumbai? I know there's a lot of work that is happening on the highways, but how do we tell them that it takes you only 7 hours or 8 hours to get to Goa? Things like that. We need to really do a deep study into this, and this is
absolutely
if the flights are not working out. But because today the talk is that people will drive to 3 to 4 hours, of any destination. But fortunately, or unfortunately for us, I would say that this is a very for us, which is going to give somewhere. But we need to really, really look at it. But coming back to your question, yes, I still feel that Goa needs a good PR public for tourism, and I think that will do a lot of trick for.
Okay, so we have some questions coming in, and to all the attendees, once again, please feel free to put in your questions. Another request is try and put your name over there so that we know who's asking the question. And if there is a particular panelist that you want us to, direct the question to, happy to put it across. The first question is, a destination needs to be able to cater to all tourists, right? And this is on the lines that we were talking. One cannot choose or filter tourists. A destination, although, can manage tourists. The need of the hour is a destination management organization, which is a team formed by participation between government and public stakeholders and experts. Is that a possibility in Goa? Mr. Braganza, I think you have been the bridge between all the organizations working in the tourism industry and Goa, the government of Goa, for a very long time. Would you like to shed some light on this question?
This idea actually was channelized in the Goa tourism policy. And over the years, finally, at last, we have a tourism master plan which is not implemented, which covers the idea of private and public partnership so that we can take ahead or go ahead by implementing so many things we have decided in the past and issued white papers and recommendations, representation. So therefore, as I said in the beginning, we need this body to come into existence, and then we have to micromanage through that body, because the constitution of that body is 5 members of the industry, 5 members from the government, and there is a chairman which is there. And it has certain powers which will override most of the departments, and all the departments, including the tourism department, GTDC and others, will fall within the umbrella of the tourism board. Right. At the moment, we don't have that sense of direction. We have been only talking and giving ideas. Now there's a time to implement the ideas. The first thing that one needs to look at, when are we ready to start business, which is an important aspect of the post-COVID period. Right. And we have a COVID-free state, but we should not spoil that image by being in a hurry to start. We should
Absolutely,
be
sure.
Absolutely. We should be sure that we are completely able to handle and deal with the tourists coming into Goa. True. At the moment, we don't have those capabilities, but we have to wait for some more time.
So I think the intent here should be to continue the dialogue while this crisis is going on, and at the same time, engage with the different stakeholders who are there, and try and at least inculcate some of the fresh thoughts that like forums like this are giving you. Jack, you have a question, and I think that this is a question on a lot of people's mind, especially in the capital city of Panjim. How has the offshore casino impacted tourism in Panjim? Do you think Panjim should remain an offshore casino destination? Jack, you're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot about that. I'll try and answer this question by giving a bit of perspective. When I first started working, which was somewhere in the early 2000s, and the year I started working in the tourism industry was a very bad year. 9/11 had happened. There was, I think, a 20% dip in revenues and so forth. Panjim was still relatively a backwater. You had some domestic tourists who came, who shopped, and who did the boat cruise. And you also had Fontaines, which was just sort of starting. Vineet was around, we were around, Afonso Guest House was around, Viva Panjim was around. And then you had the normal business hotels. I think you had the Marriott, Vivanta was not there. You had only Marriott, Mandovi, and so on. Between 2004 and 2008 was, I think, the apex of Panjim as a cultural destination at that time. Growth took off. We had Fontaines festivals of the art. We had culture going on and so forth. If we had continued on that route and done what Kerala did, maybe whole of Panjim could have become the equivalent of what Fort Kochi is today. Yes. Panjim could have developed very differently. But we went down the casino route, and whether we like it or not, we have gone down there. They are licensed businesses. They exist today. They have, I think, 4,000, 5,000 people visiting every day. Quality can always be questioned, but they bring in money. They fill in a lot of hotels, and they are there today. So Panjim, after you have given a business license to operate, to change that image now is very difficult. Culture can add to it. We can see how culture is put ahead. We can do it with festivals like Fontaine, like Serendipity, and maybe other things. But as far as I'm concerned, the casinos are here. We have to build around that.
I think point taken, and you would have seen the kind of heritage tours and the walks that are carried on in Panjim. I think that brings a nice little mix to the people visiting Goa, visiting Panjim, and I think that should also continue.
Adding to what Jack said, may I butt in if possible?
Sure, sure.
I don't think casinos per se are bad. They add a straight of income that the state needs. Yeah, I think it is the implementation of idea that's gone wrong. Maybe the locations can be need to be looked at again. Maybe you need to bring the montage of Panjim and Fontainebleau back, yeah, with the Mandovi River uncluttered. And
Right.
look at how you want to place your casinos. They are moving assets. They can move. And they're economically so viable that if investors are pushed, they will make more expensive, more investments into the state and actually have maybe onshore casinos, not offshore. So, I mean, one needs to have a pragmatic look at
Absolutely. I think this it has.
Can I add here?
Yeah, there are always two sides to a coin, as we say it, right? And as Jack right.
Yeah.
Can I?
Sorry.
Can I come in?
Yeah.
Can I come in?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, going back to the casinos, I know it has the good side, it has the bad side. Good side is the economics of it and the money people are making around. But I feel for so long, it has been a monopolistic kind of a business. And at one time, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, when he was the chief minister, he had toyed with the idea of having the casinos distributed or at one location in somewhere closer to the new international airport, so that the people who come into Goa bring the money but don't spread around all over Goa. And therefore, there was this idea of shifting the river casinos onto the shore. But that idea never took off for some reason or the other. But I think that's an idea worth looking at. The other aspect of the casinos is everybody is talking about regulating casinos, having a controlling body, and all the countries where casinos are doing successful business have such bodies which controls the quality of the business. Whatever the casinos do are under a watchful eye of a body. Now, you go to certain, I'm not suggesting the US, but go to Sydney or go to some other country. There are casinos which don't disrupt normal life and have a very passive existence. You don't even notice that they are there.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Mr. Brandon said. Can I come in, if you don't mind?
Vincent, we'll have to hold on to that. We'll have to hold on to that. We have a lot of questions coming in. Sorry about that. Okay, so and thank you, Mr. Bagranza, for adding that note. But I think it's a very long conversation, and probably on casinos we could probably have a separate session altogether, because everybody has a point of view, and
I just want to say one thing on this. I think we should.
Sure, sir.
We leave the casinos outside now. Otherwise, we are going to miss the bus. Now any type of business, if you start targeting the casinos and if you go to the government and say, we don't want casinos, we want casinos. No, we need to go to the government and say, this is what we want. 1, 2 things that we are serious about. And this has been a problem, and I think it's also panel said bad, it's only is right. So we'll be backing up if we get behind the casinos now, but we need to beautify Panjim. We need to make sure the walls which are broken in the heritage buildings are fixed, the roads are fixed, things like that. because then it becomes, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon, a mess, because we discuss too many things which are not necessary for us. And that's the reason why, if you look at the whole thing, because there has been so much of divide amongst us on our opinions, that's why the tourism is in a mess. So that's my personal belief, but I think we should just on a great idea of what to do, leave the casino aside, the top just left aside.
Sure. So which brings us to another interesting question, because what is portrayed as Goa outside is what all the tourists perceive, and they end up coming to Goa. So that is a question which has come up. And Parag, I'd like you to jump in here, because they say that in movies, the way it is kind of projected that it's a place for XYZ, and here you are one of the warriors of sorts, okay, trying to position Goa in a much different light, okay. So should we be positioning our wildlife tourism, or is there a fear of losing what we have on that front as well, right?
Right. So I completely agree with the question that how we brand ourselves, how we put ourselves across is going to define what kind of people we are going to invite. For example, we have been operating for the last 7-8 years, conducting tours, wildlife tours throughout the state and beyond, and we haven't had a single case of any undesirable tourist coming to us or any undesirable guest coming to us. Now the reason is we put certain filters, not necessarily for the guest, but for ourselves. We have put certain criteria for ourselves, and we stick to them, because of which we get a certain kind of client, which is always a responsible client. I think everybody speaks, I've heard this not only on this forum, but otherwise also, that everybody thinks ecotourism is something that, is a thing going forward. With many of these client surveys, saying that people don't want to go to popular destinations anymore. They want to, go to offbeat areas and, go in small groups. Everybody thinks ecotourism is, the answer. But I have a few concerns here. One is that whatever people might say, I think the post-COVID society and businesses may not be as sensitive as we would like them to be. Once tourism picks up, it starts. I think like any other business, people will probably rush to rush into the melee. So that's my fear. Secondly, the ecotourism in the past and wherever it's being promoted, I don't think it's really being promoted in the right sense. Where the local stake is not really taken into consideration. I am not saying local stake in terms of just business, but decision making. In many cases, and I think ecotourism is a good idea. It's
Right.
like you can have the cake and eat it too. But I think we should turn it into a livelihood opportunity rather than just employment generation. Where there is ownership with communities, and there are a couple of examples in Goa which we have been part of. It's just a matter of scaling it up.
Absolutely. And I think, just to share some of my interactions, when we came up with Beeline, which is, the e-bike tours in Goa, we started off with Goa. And I remember the first conversation I had with Ernest, right? And he was so happy that, there is something new which is coming into Goa, which will get showcased across. And till date, he has been one of our biggest brand ambassadors, trying to help us and support us. We were a very small organization, but I think, Ernest, you have also been highlighting these kind of themes, these kind of activities, which are away from the usual, beer and beach kind of activities, right? Any insight from your travelers as to what they look for in Goa right now in terms of heritage tourism or environment? You're on mute, Ernest. You're on mute.
Very sorry. Your concept was very new event to me, and I was very impressed. But at the same time, we need to develop similar ideas. Many of us feel that Goa is just a beach destination. But no, the tourist wants to do many other things besides spending time on the beach. And we have a mix. We have the domestic tourist who also wants to go in the hinterlands, because if you see the number of tourists, for example, going to Dudhsagar waterfalls, you will be surprised. Sometimes you don't have enough of jeeps to go there. So why not promote some other waterfall, but not with such numbers, not mass. I'm against mass tourism going to Dudhsagar or going to the hinterlands, as Parag just mentioned. We should not destroy what we have. But at the same time, we need to promote sensibly, but promote. Like Goa tourism, we will say, okay, we have a Maya Lake. There's some Pate Balloon in Kapen. But how do you go to Kapen? What if the winds blow and then you come back spending around 5,000 rupees on taxi up and down? It doesn't work like that. So we need to promote hinterland tourism, but well planned. Unfortunately, we cannot depend on the government of ours, because over the years, I've seen there's been no support for people who venture into any type of tourism related business. All my hotelier friends today have set up on their own. No support from the government. I saw one question, someone has asked me, what do we do about, how do we attract more tourists to Goa? Now is the time we need to tell the government that we need to bring down the GST. We have to bring down GST. We have to look at the charter landing cost of a charter in Goa. One flight works out to around 3 lakhs rupees. Look at Sri Lanka, look at Thailand. They're offering it free. Visa free on arrival. Not even visa on arrival, but free. So unless we do this, you will not get all types of tourists to Goa. Then we are in bunch into like only beach tourism or pubbing, people come for weekends or honeymoon couples. We need, Goa can cater to different types of tourists, all types of tourists. But like you have one event which you do. Maybe you should not, I was thinking of why don't we do something like that on our rivers? Now if you go to try to do something on the rivers, they say no, the boat cannot go out of the rivers, you cannot go to the sea. Why don't we use of the entire coastline from Tirakol? Why don't we bring people right up to Fort Aguada? Maybe Ravi can give us enlighten on this. But I'm saying, why don't we do this boat cruise? I've never heard of a boat cruise which does the entire coastal.
So Ravi, I can see the smile on your face, and we've had so many conversations around waterways and how we could make them into an alternate tourism path. And what Ernest is highlighting here is exactly the same. Do you think that our waterways are ready to be alternate sources of transport as well as for tourism?
I personally believe that is the only solution. It is the last frontier, which is controllable, which is manageable, and which still is pristine. If it is mined sensibly, then I think waterways is actually what that's going to unlock Goa's potential. Inland tourism and waterways is my humble belief. I mean, worldwide, if you look at Croatia, for instance, if you look at Spain, they have monetized the marine ecosystem, water, starting from water inland. So yes, there is potential, and infrastructure, honestly speaking, it does not require much investments. It exists because Goa has a long maritime history. So you have marinas, you have jetties, you have slipways, you have jettyways. They exist. If mined appropriately, yes, I think this can actually add a true dimension to start facelifting Goa from just plain vanilla beach tourism.
Right. So I think, Jack, this question is especially for you, and not in the hat which you wear at ETAG, because most of the panelists have also mentioned that we need to ensure that the government is aware, and ETAG has been leading this communication so many number of times. Okay, so is there a proposition of asking for some kind of a relief package or some kind of other incentives, like GST was one thing which Ernest mentioned. Is there anything specific that is being ideated or thought about?
There are two of my senior TTAG colleagues who are also on this panel, Mr. Braganza and Ernest. And
Sure.
in fact, all of us felt that Mr. Braganza, with his vast experience, would be the best to represent us on the Economic Revival Committee.
Right.
He has given a detailed list of recommendations which are short term as well as medium and long term. So I think it's best that you address it further to him to
Sure.
take it forward.
Appreciate that. Appreciate sharing that insight with us. Mr. Braganza, would request you to share your thoughts on the same.
I have given those recommendations. There are lots of them are on the economic front and for survival, because at the moment we are living on oxygen, and therefore, and two consistent issues with everybody has been interest rates of the borrowings they have and wages of the labor. How far can we manage those wages? How far can funding go? Many of the countries have now, some of the states have started suspending labor laws, but it doesn't mean to say we have to leave the labor in the lurch. We have to take care of them. At the same time, if our businesses fail, then we can't take care of them at all. So therefore, we had looked at two areas where we need to act immediately. Now, many of the states have already suspended labor laws, but the interest rates, the government of India has recommended in a circular dated 27th March that that the lending to for working capital, CCs and overdrafts should be facilitated and advanced more than the actual borrowing they have. But the nationalized banks have offered this facility, but the private banks are not following the Reserve Bank guidelines on the ground that they are bound by their board decisions and not by the Reserve Bank. I have even complained to the Reserve Bank, but the Reserve Bank says that we have no control over them. So this is one issue, but I would like to go back to one other issue which Vincent highlighted regarding waterways. I had taken the government authorities, including the chief secretary and the tourism minister, on a drive or on a trip on a boat along all the riverways of Goa. And we were surprised to notice that every 1.5 to 2 kilometers, there are existing Portuguese-built jetties. And they are there still, though they are so old. Apparently, before the buses came into existence or roads were built, Goa was serviced by the waterways. And it's a beautiful experience. Apart from being a service, everybody was coming to work to Panjim and even Mapsa city, the supply. If you see Mapsa city near the church, there was a jetty. And all the material, the whole market built around that. So therefore, we don't have to do much for infrastructure. We only got to set up one restaurant or a small entertainment area at each jetty. And they are there at every 2 kilometers in Goa, in all the rivers.
Right.
So, yeah. Now, if you are going back to the revival committee, I have been a little bit critical of the revival committee. I have made my attempts at every stage to put forth our views, but so far not a single decision has come forth.
Okay. So let's hope for the best and let's keep our fingers crossed. One last question, which is probably on everybody's mind who is attending this webinar. We don't really have a clear view of the curve flattening. What is the hope in each one of you as to when do we think we will be able to receive to this and be not back where we were, but in terms of revival, where do you see the timeline to be?
Yes. Can I take that?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so Sam, what happened is that we do not know a definite answer to what's happening around. Correct? None of us know whether vaccine is going to be found. The strategy will change. If you don't have so many infection, the strategy will change. If there is it comes back, the strategy will change. Hence, I think it is important that we do a strategy for every step. Suppose trust me, if the vaccine, you don't have to worry. I mean, everything will be booming, because the fear of that will be out. Hotels will do much more money. People will say there are, so it will be just be a miracle. So, and that's the reason why I think it's very important that we look at everything. We take this, say, suppose people have to come by road, then what is our strategy? How we are going to check them? If they're going to be coming by flights, then what is the strategy? If the whole thing is just vanished, then what should be our strategy? So I think there is no right or wrong answer to this, because we ourselves are not sure. So we don't know when the lockdown will open up, or whether it will close again. We really don't know. So I think, in my opinion, there is no real answer to this. But the good part is that every crisis there is always a silver lining. I'll give you an example. And that is what we need to understand. That these taxi drivers, if you look at our main problem, are the taxi drivers, correct? If you want them to, like Anas was saying, you want them to go to Dudhsagar. Why do you don't want to go to Dudhsagar? Because of the taxi driver. Forget about the roads aside, because it is so expensive. People say that, I can fly cheaper to go Mumbai, then I have to pay to go to one destination or another destination in Goa itself. Now, these taxi drivers, which we have in Exotica, for example, today they are on their knees pleading with me, give me 5,000 rupees, because they have understood, the value. Okay. Now, how do we tell them that, see, it is, you made when the sun was shining, and this is what happens if tourism is not there. They are saying, give me 5,000 rupees a month for me to survive. That is what the halat is today of them. I really feel bad for them. It should not happen. But I think somewhere we need to relook at this. As I said, that the rebooting should happen. I think relook at the whole thing. There's a lot of positivity. There's a lot of hope that we have. More than hope, I think there's a lot of faith. That things.
I think absolutely, Mr. Vincent. I think, as you rightly put it, this is the time to think back and put our thoughts together, that this is an opportunity that we have and we should make the most of it. This platform, ideasforgoa.com, is exactly trying to do the same. There are people who have always wanted to contribute to Goa's prosperity, not just in terms of monetary terms, but also in terms of the ecological side, environment side, the culture. And I think this is a good time to do that. Once again, request everyone to log into www.ideasforgoa.com, log in your ideas. There's no good time for a good idea, right? We're just about tipping over the closing time. On behalf of Ideas for Goa, I would like to thank all the panelists for taking out time from their schedule, for being here, making this a very, very sporty conversation, very involving and engaging conversation. I wish all of you a very healthy week ahead. Stay safe, and thank you very much for joining in.
See everybody in Goa.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Actually, some group of ideas, Vincent Ramos, Hiran Saklo, Hiran,